All right. And Dan, it says live, but we're not live. We're just recording. All right.
Okay.
So hello. Welcome back. This is Dunn on Purpose podcast. I'm excited to have this conversation about how we can live with greater purpose. The purpose of this podcast is to encourage and empower and enrich your life so you can do that. It is previously called the Strong Calm with Aaron Dunn, and we're going to still use those three C's: strong, calm, communication with ourselves, with others, with life itself, community building, how we build stronger connections with each other through the values that we share, and how those two things, when we build them with strength, lead to stronger company, whether that's the company that you're building or the company that you keep. And so we're going to do a little bit we're going to have some difference. We're going to have some new things as we roll into this new era of this show, this program, this podcast. But also we're gonna stick with what works as well. And so I've got Dan Kimball over in Arizona with me. Dan, what's up?
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. He is a counselor and coach, and will be a new friend that I met through the heroic community. But before we get started, I'll give a more professional background on him. I'd love to ground us with a meditation. So, Dan, you ready to join us there?
I am, sir.
Absolutely. So let's see. If I'll invite you to close your eyes if you're able to do so. If not, that's fine. And we're just going to breathe in and out. In and out. Let's have a conversation that is grounded in wisdom, where we know the ultimate game and how to play it well. Self-mastery with structural, reactive, and expansive discipline. With love, where we're connected, engaged, and encouraging. With courage, where we speak and act in the presence of fear. With gratitude, appreciating all the blessings that we have in our lives. With hope, with our mind on our goal, the agency that we have, and the many pathways available to us. With curiosity, shining a light on what works and what doesn't. And zest, where we dominate our fundamentals so we have heroic energy. And with that, let's start this great conversation. So Dan, he is a professional he's a graduate from University of Phoenix with a master's degree in counseling and a license by the Arizona Board of Behavioral Health and extensive training in progressive coaching as well. He's a heroic coach, as I mentioned, and you can check more about him on Path number 4 change.com. And his approach draws from several disciplines, evidence-based techniques such as cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, and positive psychology. Dan, anything else you want to salt and pepper that with?
Man, that was a good intro. The only add I would say is I'm doing the ambassador representation of heroic as of last week, and I know you are too. So great to have you along with the journey, and I'm super excited about this stuff. It's like
Absolutely.
pretty much a completion of my life calling to work with Brian and all of that. So, but we'll get into that later.
Yes. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. And it is a blessing. What a blessing it is that we would not have been connected without them. And it's awesome to be able to connect it with you. And then I am able to connect you with the people that I know, because the more of these type of conversations we can have, the better the world will be, I believe. So let's jump into the 3 C's,
Right.
and we'll start there. So as you may or may not know, if you've been a listener of the podcast, I'm a lover of acronyms, and I've been collecting hundreds of acronyms over the years, and sharing those more and more as time goes on. And so, what in learning more about you, Dan, from your website, and I stumbled across another one that I'm going to add to the list and give you due credit. It is ARIA, and it says it's a 4-stage model of change that is packed with practical, evidence-based strategies for setting and achieving your goals, building habits, and using your willpower wisely. And
Yeah.
so I'm all in on that. So with that, I'll just let you frame it up to talk about communication with ourselves, others, life itself. That POWER acronym. Could you take us into that a little bit?
Yes, of course. So, a little history of this before I tell you how it works. I used to work in a partial hospital program, which is a place, it's sort of like the hospital, but you get to go home at night, but it's very intensive. And so I would do groups all day long for people who are really severely mentally ill or really having serious problems in their life, right? They literally just get out of the hospital. So it's called a step down from a hospital. And I would do groups to help people improve and, use all these various coping strategies and stuff. And one of the models that we used in the program was called the change curve, right? So it's seen in business, and it normally looks like denial, resistance, exploration, action, right? So it's a practical model. And I would walk people through this model, and what I found was each stage had somewhat of a psychological risk, right? So to move from denial to even resistance, you have to basically agree that there's a problem. Otherwise, you're still in denial and things like this. But what I found was um, I wanted to make my own version of this. And so I created one with the ARIA word there, and it stands for awareness rather than denial. And then resilience, and then inspiration and action. So it's kind of the same curve, but I also added sort of the flip side of ARIA with the same acronym. So each stage has a counterpart, and that's the psychological part. And so awareness has the opposite of acceptance, right? And we can totally unpack this as we go, but I'll just lay it out for you. And then resilience has the opposite of resistance. And then inspiration has intention as the balancing part. And then action has the balancing part of accountability. So it's all great to talk about. You're going to do some goals and stuff, and that's just your basic kind of awareness of what you want, get your resilience going, get some inspiration, and take some action. But what I found working with so many people is that people get hung up, right? It's not like a straight line to the left, as Brian would say. It's all sorts of things. You set your goal, but then you have this internal dialogue going on And what I found with the heroic program is he outlined it perfectly. There's your identity, right? And your daimon. And so our identity, as you know, are simply our habits of how we are day to day. That forms your identity, James Clear stuff. And then there's your daimon, right? And I really look at this as not only your higher ability or, arate and all of that, but accountability. And so in the model, you have your identity and your daimon kind of following along and making sure that you're really, really being virtuous to yourself. So that's the model. And to expand on it even more crazy, I interlaced it with the 6 virtues and 24 character strengths from the positive psychology. And I put each character strength mapped into the 4 stages of change. And I put it together in a hexagon so you can keep track, because it's like massive, like memorization, right? Not only do we have four stages that have 2 layers to each, and then the 6 virtues and the 24 character strengths. This is a whole impossibility to remember. And so in order to keep it all straight, I created a thing called the optotron, right? So Brian has his compass, right? And I have the optotron, which is a hexagonal layout of the 4 stages of change, 6 virtues, and 24 character strengths. So you can see it visually.
Wow, that's beautiful. I would love
happy to show you my model. So I have this online as an interactive website, so you can click on the various character strengths, right? But just conceptually, I'll show it to you. I happen to be an artist, and so I made it for this really fun box.
Oh, wow.
And so this is part of my daily practice. I use this box to keep track. And so I'll just go through it with you if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So this is a symbol of the ARIA model. And I used gold because, the story of the golden Buddha, right? Mm-hmm. If you were to actualize all of your 24 character strengths, you would be the Bodhisattva. You'd be living with full arate. And of course, this is, only select individuals can pull this off, right? But I wanted that to be the frame of, that's your ideal, is could you actualize all of your 24 character strengths? So this has nothing to do with the optotron. This is just me messing around because I'm a very creative person. But I made this cool box that explodes, right? And so I made all these images. But nonetheless, so here's the model right here, this one here. But I put all the virtues out here, and I'm kind of a fan of like techno and weirdness like that. So I made it kind of like cyberpunk, right? Just to make it more engaging. And you can see it in some of my videos online. I do like a tutorial walkthrough of ARIA and stuff like this. And it's all cybery. It's real fun. But I'll show you the model so you can see it.
Awesome. Okay, so for those who are just listening right now, what I'm going to do is once Dan sends it over to me, I will put it in the show notes, like a link or something like that, so that if somebody wants to see it after the fact, they can have it. And then also, I just encourage you to check out the video because that box is incredible. What a powerful creative act to really put it physically into the world and have a tangible something that you can return to. And like, that is a powerful tool. Man, there's all kinds of places we could go with this. Right? This is great. You literally opened Pandora's box.
Oh, we haven't even begun. So it's got 4 levels, this box.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm a very conceptual kind of person. So this helps me a ton. So just so you can kind of visualize it. So here's a printout. And this is all in the ARIA model. Whoops, there we go. So you can see the center is awareness and acceptance. Without that, you cannot start any goal. And then the second ring there is resilience and resistance. Once you have a goal, you need energy and boundaries. That's your resistance. And then going the third ring, inspiration and intention. So, in other words, you might get a little boost from, seeing your heroes. That's an inspiration. And intention down here. This is probably what you're working on a lot with people, community, of how is this going to matter in the world? What is your intention with this goal? And then the last ring here is the top part is action and accountability. So, of course, we do need to take action. And people talk a good game, but they don't get it into action. And then once they do an action, they don't do any accountability. They don't actually measure, right? And so that's why I created this model. And so in the same kind of thinking, the ring here is the same, four rings or 4 levels of ARIA. And I've mapped all the character strengths there, and they're color coded. So wisdom there is purple, red is courage, green temperance, blue transcendence, orange humanity, justice is yellow, and then these outliers here were just to help frame it, and they're all part of accountability. So
Wow.
that's a monster, I know.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And so this is the beauty of an acronym, right? Because you can take those 4 letters, and then you've expounded and expounded and expounded, and it just keeps on growing, legs and deepens as your understanding deepens. I'm sure you didn't say, I'm going to start with this octatron and all this stuff, but as you continue to pour over it and really meditate and marinate inside of it, it just starts to expand. And I can imagine that is the same type of experience your clients and the people around you can experience as you get to know them, you build that relationship, and you communicate about these ideas. If anyone is interested in the VIA character, what Dan is referencing, viacharacter.org is a wonderful website, positive psychology, where you can take a short quiz and understand what your top 5 character strengths are. And it will also give you a free list of all 24 that they measure based on how you answer that quiz. So Dan, you might be wondering, you might be thinking, my next question is, what are your top 5 character strengths?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me, because they're right here in my box. Or I'll put the lid back on so I don't blow it for you. So you might be able to guess, but my top one is creativity, right?
Okay, yeah.
I put around my center here, I put creativity, and there's spirituality. They all go around as they fold out. And the reason I did that was to remind myself of lead with these things, right? So I think it was Tom Rath who said, don't try and use character strengths that really aren't your strengths, that they're not your signature strengths. Because his point was, you will do so much better at just being yourself, right? So myself looks like creativity, curiosity, love of learning, spirituality, and gratitude. Those are mine. And I added 1 because this hexagon has the need for 6, right? So I added bravery because often this is very difficult for me. Sometimes I just go, nah, that's really too weird or something. And, nobody's going to relate to this, right? And so I sometimes just think it to myself, and this box I made for myself, but it's part of my personal mission to share more about this with other people and get outside my comfort zone and reach a wider audience.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. That is so cool. And yeah, every character strength is evident in this conversation already, and also just in right in that box. That's incredible. What a beautiful
So I'll
tool.
share the next two parts with you if you don't mind,
Yeah, go ahead.
just to kind of tie it all on. This box is available on Amazon if you really want it. It didn't
Okay.
cost much, but of course I had to make all these graphics. So going inside, I then put 6 power animals in it. And so Brian has some exemplars on his wall, right, for motivation. And because of my background with shamanism, my father got me into that very early in life. I actually went to a workshop with Sandra Ingerman. She's a famous practitioner, and back in the 80s, this was hardly known, right? So there was a guy, Michael Harner, who wrote a book called, The Way of the Shaman. And Sandra Ingerman was his graduate student at the time. So I got exposed to this immediately. Like I think I was 21 or something. I was the youngest guy in the room, for sure. And the awareness of using these concepts of power animals can really motivate. And it's the same as what Todd Herman talks about in Alter Ego, is you adopt the persona. So one is a tiger. I use that to keep myself, energy at work and love. Well, this is my energy, right? As I think of tiger and the energy of that. And, so I have 6 of these. And then on my newest thing, I have this chakra, right? So this is a crown chakra. And inside here is my little heart, sacred heart there. But I added the 6 chakras for fun, because as of late, I've been exploring Reiki systems and the chakra system just for more awareness. And so that's been totally life-changing. We could talk for hours on that, but I put that into the thing. And then in the middle, I put my little heart, right? And inside, I also made this fun little game that I play. It's like cards. So I made all the character strengths and little cards in case I need to reference. So
Oh my gosh, I'm blown away. This is the coolest thing. Like, it's really incredible. And I hope you are proud of that work, because it is what a gift that you're giving to whoever receives it. That is really awesome.
And so I know it's a lot to keep straight. And so that's partly why I made it for myself. And also, it's very practical. All of the character strengths are actionable. And that's why I really love that model. And I really love that Brian also uses it. He and I hit on this idea about the same time. And so I often ask my wife, well, who came up with it first, right? Because he came up with his virtues compass, and I came up with this optitron thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're similar, right? Mine is a little bit more like overblown, like every single one I try and activate, right?
Yeah. Well, what's wrong with that, right? It's
nothing.
It's
right?
super cool.
It's just very hard to keep it all straight,
Right. And so
that's why I created this.
Yeah, and one thing that it just kind of, for anyone listening that's like, whoa, what, going deep, which is what it's the sandbox I love to play in. I mean, I hope that you can take, one of these things, like you can also just put everything back in the box and fold up those power animals. You can fold up, whatever you need to do, and then just say, you know what, today I'm going to think about awareness. Today I'm going to think about this. And you just start there, because that's just the power of compounding, the power of that intentional action and consistency through that is like that first commitment. It sounds like you have to make is, I'm going to do this work, and I'm going to walk through that door, and I don't know what's going to come about it, but I'm open to receiving whatever it is and working with it in my own time. And I think that that is just what it's really about, because over time, as you continue to take those steps, you'll continue to grow, and that understanding will just become more and more. And that's when you find that strength to continue and then go, you know what, there's another door back there. I'm going to open that one up and see where how I can navigate with that. And, talking with Dan, like Dan, obviously you've got years and years of experience in this walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just amazing that, we can connect, and that you can connect with others to be that guide that somebody might need to, shepherd them along. And that's really cool.
Just to put it on a small end, nobody needs to do the whole model here, but the main two are awareness. What do I want, wish, or hope for? And then the actionable character strengths are curiosity about that, simply what's possible. Love of learning, you simply start learning, well, is that even possible? Right? You start exploring. And then creativity, you add your own thing of how do I show that, whatever the goal is. And then the flip side of this is the hard part. This is where all the counseling work comes in, is acceptance. So there's 3 character strengths there that from my model is judgment, perspective, and spirituality. So judgment is there because people say, well, I can't do that, to quote Joseph Campbell, right? And people simply are stuck in their irrational beliefs about what is possible. And so that's a lot of the work that I do. And then perspective of how would I actually even begin that? What would it look like? That's another character strength. And then this is the really hard one, spirituality and purpose. People often know that they have a purpose or a calling, the hero's journey, right there, and yet they refuse. That's the work that I do with people, is helping them resolve that, yes, they have a goal, but they're standing there on their own foot, right? Because they cannot give themselves permission to follow their own calling and start working on it. Now, once that gets resolved, then the other 3 rings of ARIA here, or stages of change, totally unfold quite easily. You start getting your energy up, you start setting boundaries around your time or whatever, you find some motivation out there, and you take some actions. That part's easy.
Yeah.
In comparison to solving the riddle of why am I in my own way?
Yes, that is the riddle, right? That is the ultimate riddle. And sometimes it's about, when you find yourself on that riddle, it is the answer is something that you actually have to confront more than you have to solve, more than you have to figure out. Because I think a lot of times you subtly, there's this soft whisper saying, this is what it is. And then it comes to have that courageous, bold act to say, that is what it is, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah, I call that acceptance. And I think I get that word from the lady who wrote Brian Katie. And she talks about a lot about acceptance, and same with Brene Brown, right? Of vulnerability and really owning, like, where am I? Am I even doing anything? Am I accepting the call and all of that? It's a big step, and this is what I saw in the partial hospital program. You could introduce ideas to people, and they simply could not bring themselves to take the psychological risk to work on themselves. It took a lot of effort to accept, where are you, in your process? Are you even using any of the tools, right? That's a big accountability right from the start. But once you resolve this, then you're good to go. Brian talks about the etymological root of ambivalence. I love that. Ambivalence, strength on both sides. So when we're ambivalent about our goals, it simply means you're aware of what you want, but you're not necessarily accepting of where you are. And so you're arguing both sides, and then you're just wasting energy stuck.
Oh man, that is just a powerful, powerful thing. I love it. Etymology, in addition to acronyms, is something that really just fires me up as well. And that is such a wonderful frame. That is powerful. I was flipping through my notes trying to find, like, I'm missing one from my memory bank on my own strengths, my own signature strengths.
Mm-hmm.
I commit to them every day, but for some reason in the conversation it's not coming up. But mine are love of learning, hope, humor, and judgment. And then there's one more I can't quite place right now. But man. Wow, I think there's plenty of notes to be taken there, and I in the interest of time, I want to shift the conversation a bit. Again, I'm going to request that I get a link to some of these things so I can include it in show notes and things, so people can take part if they want to, dive deeper with you, Dan. So, but in that. Along that same line of thinking, let's move to that second C. I think we definitely covered communication quite well, and that's the thing. It's like language is what opens these doors, right? And so when we have these proper definitions, or if we understand from a certain fundamental lens of going ambivalence, yeah, I've heard that before, but that etymology that takes it that one extra step, I'll never think about ambivalence the same way again.
Right.
And so. It's so wonderful. So
I'll share one more with you since you love this.
Okay, let's go.
So once you've done the ambivalence and you've resolved it, you've decided, and the root word of this is dicere, to cut. So you're going to cut off the part that is resisting so you can get it in action. This is huge. Because, half of the time we're, I'm not sure. And you just added 100-pound weight on your back, right? And if you can literally cut that off, you're good to go.
Amen to that. And it calls to mind the other quote, what 100% is easier than 99%.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's shift to the second C. So community. And so I asked this of all my guests. It's a fun question that came out serendipitously with a previous guest of mine. And it was just like, yes, this is an anchor of the show. And so community, I asked this village, it's called the village question. And so imagine that you are given a plot of land and they say, Dan, we love the Octatron and we want you to build a community over here on this part of land. And but what we have is east and south, or north, south, east, west, a cross section of roads, and what to lead your people to your new community. And we're going to put 4 signs, facing each direction, with a message, a value, a virtue, to attract that community to this place. And so, Dan, the village question is that: what message, virtue, value would you put on each of those 4 signs? You don't have a lot of space, but you have some.
Okay, I'll attempt this. This is a hard one, Aaron. So what virtue would I put on the sign on the 4 directions?
Yes. One virtue per sign.
Okay. So I would definitely put wisdom as the most important. and then courage right behind that, humanity, because that's going to help the community, and transcendence, because that's what we're all really aiming for, right? To become the greatest versions of ourselves in service to others, not just to be, as Brian always jokes, not just to have a six pack, right? That's not the purpose at all.
Right, right. I love those. I love those.
Yeah.
Wisdom,
Courage,
courage, humanity, and transcendence.
yeah. So I'm
Wonderful.
leaving out temperance and justice if we were to round it out for the six.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
those, I'd go with the four then.
Yeah, I think that's a strong four. I think it's a strong four.
Yeah.
That spurs me to inspires me to ask another question, because especially in the context of community. So
Mhm.
you put something up and you start talking about transcendence.
Mhm.
That is not something that is typically in common conversation, right?
No.
But however, within entertainment, for example, we're watching stories of transcendence, and we're watching stories of humanity. We're watching, you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
watch stories as an entertaining thing. I was watching Conor McGregor's new Netflix documentary, and like that is a story of transcendence, right? Like
I gotta
it gets
watch
my
this.
energy. It gets my energy going. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, But I mean, it's charting his path, right? And like it shows how he grows as a person, through loss and through fighting and all that kind of stuff, right? That's a story of transcendence, of a man going from one place to another. But if you say, hey man, that Conor McGregor Netflix, it's cool, it's all about transcendence, people are going to go, I might take a left turn or a right turn and avoid that community because of the languaging, and I don't know if I interface with it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask I want to frame it up that way and ask the question of, how can we help our local communities be more open to conversations like this within, transcendence? Because like at some point it has to leave the yoga studio. It
Mhm.
has to leave these places and get into our homes. It has to get into our offices, and it has to get into the government, for example.
Mhm.
So we all have a unified and aligned approach to making these changes that we know, you and I know, could make long lasting, wonderful changes to equip people to live their life on purpose. So, how do you think we can better do that?
Sure. So let's look at that word transcendence, which gives everybody pause. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualized individual. What, right? It
Mhm.
sounds great, but it sounds kind of frightening too. Like how am I ever going to be that? So with positive psychology, they've broken down transcendence into the character strengths, so everybody kind of agrees. That's why they wrote that. Is so there's some agreement of what are we talking about. So they named it like this: spirituality, hope, one of your character strengths, humor. I think that was your other one. Uh, Appreciation of beauty and excellence. This is the one most people think of when they think of transcendent. When you have that sense of awe and you look out and you see a gorgeous sunset and you feel that moment and you're like, ah, that's a transcendent moment. But then the other character strength that people often use practically is gratitude, that you get into a transcendent state when you give and you appreciate. The pay it forward idea is one of those gratitude and transcendent moments for people. And so I like their frame of making these all kind of practical. Those are all words that everybody can relate to. And then transcendent doesn't sound so scary. But the one that really hangs people up is spirituality, because people are, they have lots of, like, not to say negativity around it, but freak out. People have been kind of
Baggage.
Yeah, the people have been told so much of what to do that they don't want to do that. And that kills your autonomy. And that's why people don't like that. So I like the word purpose. So I often say spirituality or purpose, meaning that's a transcendent thing. If you follow your bliss, you're being who you are, you're going to feel a flow state, a transcendent state when you're doing that. So I hope I'm
Excellent.
answering that question.
No, I think
Off
it.
on a
I think it.
tangent, yeah.
No, you're great. I think it colors in some lines there. I was going to leave this for the end of the episode, but since we keep talking about it and you just brought it up, the question of purpose.
Yeah.
What does living on purpose mean to you?
So this is back to the hero's journey and stuff like this, right? So if you really check in with yourself and you can really listen to yourself, we all have a purpose. And some people are very clear on it, and others it takes a lifetime because of the programming of somebody else of what you're supposed to do. But as Joseph Campbell pointed out, when you start following your own thing, you follow your bliss. That's what he talked about. And then, oh man, you're in flow. You're feeling happy because it's who you are. You can see it with a lot of people now who are owning their gender, right? That there's a lot of um, feeling right, that is my purpose. And, it goes against everything everybody ever told them. No, you're a this or you're a that. And they're like, no, this is who I am. And they feel empowered when you do that, And so that's the real trick of purpose is could you listen to yourself, your inner daimon right there? And often it's calling, and sometimes you don't want to hear it. I know mine is quite strong, right? And a lot of the time I'm like, no, that's too crazy, right? And I simply don't want to follow it, right? And then half the time I'm like, I have no choice. And so, this is a book that Brian is not covered, but I'll share it with you. Is called The Soul's Code by Hillman. I forget his first name. I think it might be James Hillman. So I read this long before I encountered the word daimon from Brian, where he talked about this. The soul's code is a daimon that is kind of giving you your purpose or destiny or calling, and he unpacks it really well because he's a depth psychologist, which is like an extension of Carl Jung and his frame. So depth psychology goes into archetypal stuff, and it's not like the most fun of therapy, right? Because that's kind of a never-ending deal. They used to do that kind of work, but not anymore. But definitely that isn't a gateway to knowing what am I here to do. It
Let me
might
ask you.
soul's code.
Yeah, I love it. I love that recommend. Let me ask you this though, because when we think about purpose, and it is so self-directed, right? And I just renamed this podcast on Done on Purpose. It's a play of words, but at the same time gets to where I want to be in terms of the conversation, right? And in the exploration of purpose, there's so many different frameworks and different lenses of thinking on ways that you can kind of start that process. But it is so self-directed.
Yes.
I say that, and then in some of what you said, and we've talked about shamanism, we've talked about all kinds of things. So the biblical illustration of the serpent in the garden, and it says, well, why don't you just bite the apple? You want the apple, right? You know what I mean? And so I think about that when it comes to the self-direction of finding my purpose. And So Dan, the question to make it a bit more clear is, how do we know when it's a truly virtuous quest that we're on versus maybe a more vicious and subtle and uh, voice that we're actually being tempted to follow? That is that's a hard one, and if you could bring some light to that, that'd be great.
I'll attempt it. So let's just go with something practical, right? So one thing I work with is people who have addiction, right? So this is a vice, obviously, but they're in denial. They are minimizing it or rationalizing it, right? And so if you tell them, hey, you're drinking too much, right? They will have all these excuses, right? But what you want is them to be more virtuous, to your point of, well, how do we do that? So if they cannot resolve it and they simply go about an action, and the action would be, I'm still drinking, to excess, right? And of course, there's moderation out there, but you would know, and the people around you would know. And this is the part that will help you to know, am I living a virtuous life? Is the last part of this model. After the action, you have accountability. And there's 3 character strengths right there: honesty, right? Gratitude, and humility, right? So honesty will just blow you apart of, is this virtuous or not? Because you're going to check it with, how did that action land in around me, right? And honesty is part of the virtue of courage, right? It takes courage to admit, oh, wow, I just went on a bender and now I'm late for work and now I'm getting written up. You got to come to some hard honesty on that. And then humility, right? That Brian talks about this himself of, nobody just jumps out of the box and has it all figured out. You have to have the humility to go, oh, that isn't a virtue. I'm not on my path. I'm not acting with who I am. I'm lying to myself, right? Mm-hmm. And so, humility, this is from the virtue of temperance, of, can I basically check in with myself and be aware of, what am I telling myself? And then gratitude, a lovely way of holding yourself accountable, is, are you taking things for granted in your life, right? Like, you have a nice job and you have lots of money and you're out drinking every night and living it up. Well, you might be taking it too far, right? And so dialing it back of, wow, I do have a nice home and I do have a nice job, and I don't want to take it for granted. That will get you back onto, am I really living with purpose or virtue? And those 3 things will totally put you in check.
Beautiful. Wow, that was great. Thank you for answering that. And I think that you can just pick and replace whatever kind of thing that you're talking about in that same lens, and mm-hmm. you'll have some direction on where to go. All right. So Dan, before we wrap up today, I did want to talk to you about your own experience with the heroic community. So sure. I'm sharing it with some friends and anybody who will listen to me about it, because it has been so transformational for me over the last 340 something days that I've used it, I guess. And the coach program has been incredible for me as well, just to have this bank of tools that I can use personally, share with others, and it's really just changed how I think and approach different situations, and made me a better person overall. So I was curious, how did you get involved in heroic? And let's just start there.
Yeah, so I think it was like in 2019. Somehow I came across Brian. I think it was maybe on YouTube or something. And I saw him doing a philosopher's note. And back then he was a much smaller guy. He's still bald and everything, but, he wasn't like this ripped individual with tattoos everywhere, right? He's real intense now. Back then he was kind of, he would call himself a philosopher, and that was fine. And along the way, became heroic the more he read about Stoicism and stuff. But so I remember, he had Optimize, I think it was called back then. It's named, it's changed names a few times, Philosopher's Notes, then Optimize. And he said, I'm going to do this coaching program and we're launching it. And I thought, wow, that's great. And it was $1,000, just like it is today. And I remember I was talking to my wife, and she's like, "Are you insane? Like, you're gonna spend $1,000 on that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she absolutely told me not to do it. Right. So I pretty much used my own money and did it. Right. Kind of against her will. Right. Against the family budget at the time, because
Yeah.
I saw the
Been there,
value.
done that.
What's that?
I said, been there, done that. I can relate.
Yeah, well, there's a risk, because I could have been in the doghouse if I was just wasting money on coaching programs or something. But the nice thing about it was he framed up kind of how to take actions along the way. He's got all sorts of stuff in there, and he's got module 0 and stuff. And here's a funny thing that he never talks about, but he should. It's really funny. So coach 1, he rolled it out, and he does intro to coaching and what we're going to do and everything. The very next week, he broke his arm.
Mm.
And so he showed up with a broken arm in a cast, and he shared the x-rays and everything. He fell off the rock wall that he made in his backyard. He fell off and hit something like a brick or something, and it broke. And they repaired him. And so he called the very next Module X. And he got that from Phil Stutz, right? And all of his Stoic philosophy kicked into gear, man, of when obstacles come your way, you just go with it. And so there he was, like modeling it live time. Any person would be like, you know what? That's over. I'm going to lay around and deal with my broken arm. Nope. There he is, on camera with his broken arm, talking about this is how it is, that no matter what comes your way, you simply continue and you keep working your protocol. And he did. He literally did push-ups with one arm and stuff like this to keep his fitness. And then he bragged about how he was training his arm to improve. And over time, he was talking about how he the doctors told him, it'd be 6 weeks and all that, right? Oh no, man. Brian was like back to it within probably a month, and because that's just who he is, of course.
Right, absolutely. It reminds me of Epictetus. He famously has a limp leg, right? And one of the greatest philosophers of our time, and a founder of Stoic thought in certain extent. And what wisdom can come out, even though he has that handicap, if you will. And so, that's just another example of how, when you put this type of thinking into practice, what more you can do, and you can do even more than you think you can do when you have the right type of tools and frame of mind about it.
Well, one thing that was great about that class and today, even today, is Brian always makes it real, right?
Mm.
So it's one thing to talk philosophy and go, oh, the obstacle is the way and stuff. Well, there he is with his broken arm, and he's doing anti-fragile work from the book Anti-Fragile, and it's Phil Stutz stuff of all this, and so he would simply tie it, anything going on in his life or in our lives during the coaching calls, just as he does today, where he ties all the wisdom to something practical. And that's unheard of, because books can touch on some things and you kind of go, oh, yeah, that's kind of like me. And then that's it. And so that's the real value of the heroic program, is you see people in action actually doing the work with the philosopher's notes that he's always talking about, and they just become a part of you. And what's really awesome is when you see it in other people and everybody's kind of talking the same language. That's why I'm super excited for the heroic coach to have the social part. They used to have Oasis. That was the name of the platform. And we would all get on and share our daily check-in, like our energy, work, love. We'd have like worksheets and stuff, and our wins and everything, right? And our identities and our daimon, everything. And so, it's really fun to engage like that. And I'm not sure what happened with Oasis. It didn't get the love, right? And so I know now that he has all these resources that he's going to make it really, really phenomenal.
Yeah, and I like that you said that, Dan, because one thing that I've gotten, of course, so much wisdom from Brian and the team and what he's put together through his content, but it is very intentional and very. I mean, he's intense, but he's also humble. And the people that I mean, Dan, you're an incredible guy. I'm so thankful to have known you. And it's not just you, though. There's so many people that we've had the opportunity to connect with that are really living life with a grand intention. And if and nobody's perfect, everybody's just as human as anybody else. But what's inspiring to me is that these people are not just drinking Kool-Aid and kicking around the language. They're going, okay, well, I hear what you're saying, and this is how it's impacting me, and this is what I'm going to do about it. And that's the fundamental difference that really sets heroic apart, I think. And I'm really excited for social too. So Dan, just to be courteous of time, when I'm trying to think, like the last question, not to, it's like, we could talk for hours, and hopefully we get to talk for more.
Yeah, you'll invite me back on, right?
Absolutely. So let's just leave it at this. For anybody interested in or curious about applying what we talked about today, maybe curious about what heroic is about, maybe curious about living on purpose and breaking through some of those obstacles that they might be facing today, how would you encourage them, empower them to move forward after they stop this show?
Sure. So if anybody is interested in heroic, of course, go check that out, because it's a 30-day free startup. And Brian doesn't say a whole lot about this, but there is a free version. You could simply be free for the rest of your life, and there's so much content there that you'd be fine. But of course, the coaching program is awesome. The app is way awesome, right? To keep it all straight, he has his own compass idea and everything, and you can make sure you're keeping on track. That's a really, really great app. It's like habit tracker or anything like that. That's what we all need. It's accountability right there in that app. But if a person is totally lost in his content, because it's like, I think it took me a year, like systemically going through the program from start to finish. After I had already done coach, I did it again, right? It took me a year to get through all that content. So it's not for the faint of heart, right? It's like a big program. So if a person doesn't have that kind of commitment, or you don't really want to commit to that, then one of the coaches would be a good choice, including myself. Of, do you want a place to start where you simply can get some of this going without having to commit to that heavy amount of information? Because unfortunately, Brian has 600 philosophers notes, and that can be kind of like, what, are you serious? Right? I mean, it's a monster. God bless the guy for however long he's been doing it, 10 plus years.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you're right. There's an entry point for anyone. You can start with, the free, and it's like you get a +1 a day, a meditation a day, and a handful of quotes, and that's just a beautiful start. Sometimes that's all you need to take that extra little bit of step, in the right direction. But then there's the next level of like, well, I want to hold myself accountable with that habit tracking and the identities, the targets. And then if you want the systemized, I'm ready to learn some stuff, that coach program is the best program I've ever been a part of. Like, it takes 300 days, and it takes a disciplined 300 days if you want to do it that way. But I mean, some of the value that I got of it was just cutting out all the other crap that I was filling my head up with, instead of, I just replaced Joe Rogan or something else that wasn't virtuously pouring into me and giving me something to really apply. And so it's just, there's levels for everyone, and the water feels good, so come in and play with us. So Dan, awesome conversation, dude. Really enjoyed it, and if I'm ever in Arizona again, I will definitely hit you up.
Great. Yeah, I'm downtown, so come down. It's a fun place in downtown Tucson. There's a lot going on. It's really fun.
Sweet. All right. To my listeners, thank you so much. If you're listening this far, then you might as well subscribe. DunnOnPurpose.com, and give Dan a check out as well. And we'll see you next time.